Good afternoon. It's been a lovely week, full of simchas, bas mitzvahs, weddings, sheva brachot, only celebrations. People are catching up for 2 years of no celebrations. And I wanted to talk to you about something very beautiful connected to this week's parsha, but also connected to next week, Wednesday. We will be celebrating 120 years since the Rebbe's birth in the city of Nikolaev, Ukraine. In fact, remarkably, I just saw a video that the city of Nikolaev was giving out to show what the Russians are doing and destroying their city, and they speak about the great luminaries that come from their city, and of course there's a picture and they show the Lubavitcher Rebbe. The Rebbe was born in 1902 in Nikolaev, and this year, Yud Aleph Nisan, the 11th day of Nisan, which will be next week Wednesday, will be marked and celebrated across the whole world as a day of celebration. And it's been dedicated since President Ronald Reagan as a day of education in the USA. And every president since has dedicated that day as Education Day, as governors, as has our Governor Charlie Baker this year. And in fact, last week, hundreds of Chabad rabbis and dignitaries and luminaries gathered in Washington to celebrate 120 years of the Rebbe. So maybe during the next 10 days, I will try to touch on some of the Rebbe's insights and also some of what made the Rebbe so unique and so remarkable. And I want to start with something beautiful from this week's Torah portion. This week's Torah portion is called Mitzora, which speaks about leprosy. As I mentioned last week, leprosy was a spiritual ailment, which, since the Jewish people in the time of the temple were so spiritually in tune and connected, that when they weren't perfect spiritually, they got a white blotch on their skin. And if the white blotch was a certain size, it meant that they had something to do to perfect, to become better human beings. And they would be secluded for 7 days out of the community to think about their imperfections and how they could become better. The Kohen would come see them when they got the white blotch, and he would say, pure, impure. If it grew to a certain size, he would say impure. But then the Torah says something else. What happens if the guy's entire body became covered in white? Do you say now that he's impure, or is he pure? And remarkably, the Torah says if his entire body is white, then the person is pure. It's a misdiagnosis. And the Rebbe so brilliantly sees a beautiful metaphor and powerful lesson for life. The Rebbe says, what's leprosy at its core? Leprosy at its core is not a dermatology. Maimonides himself testifies, he was an authority, he was a doctor, that this wasn't a physical ailment, it was a spiritual ailment. Leprosy, the white blotch, was telling us that it was God's way of telling us we had an imperfection. We had something that we needed to fix, that we needed to become better at. Says the Rebbe, when the Kohen, who's the one who has to say he's impure, looks at a human being, when one Jew looks at another Jew, and you see a little imperfection, look, we're all not perfect. We all could use becoming a little better, becoming a little more positive, a little more upbeat, a little kinder, a little more spiritual. So if the blotch becomes a little too big, an imperfection, you need time out. You become impure, you need to go without the community to think about it. But what happens if one human being looks at another human being and all they see is one big white blotch? All they see is imperfections. Says the Rebbe, what the Torah is telling us is like this. If you could look at another human being, if you could look at another Jew, if you could look at another soul, and all you see is imperfections, he's pure. You have misdiagnosed. There's a misdiagnosis here on your part. How could you look at another human being and all you see is imperfections? Yes, there could be a little white blotch. We're all imperfect. There could be things that need improvement, and sometimes we can encourage our friends and ourselves to become better. But if you can look at another Jew and all you see is imperfections, there's a grave misdiagnosis and he's actually pure. That's the story of the Rebbe. We're getting ready to celebrate 120 years. There wasn't a human being that the Rebbe met, Jew, Gentile, wealthy, poor, intelligent, simple, pompous, humble, that the Rebbe didn't love, that the Rebbe didn't find positive in them. Not only did the Rebbe not see someone entirety as imperfect, the Rebbe saw every imperfection as a catalyst to growth, to become better. Even the little white that was there the Rebbe looked at a way to make human beings become better and kinder. You know, there's a remarkable story that I saw in Jem's Living Torah, which speaks about this kid, and he says this 50 years later. It was in the 70s or 80s, and he was an orphan. His father had passed away, and his mother took him to the Lubavitcher Rebbe. She was at wit's end. Here she had a son who made a lot of trouble. They wanted to throw him out of school. She couldn't handle him. She didn't know what to do. And she came to the Rebbe to plead her case. The Rebbe should help her. And she comes into a private audience with the Rebbe and this child. And the Rebbe asked the child, "Do you like school?" And the kid looks at the Rebbe and says, "No, I hate school. I dislike school." The mother's shocked. She doesn't know where to bury herself. Here's the son who's giving you so much aggravation. Here he comes to the Rebbe. And once he's saying he hates school, the secretaries are looking. And the Rebbe looks at him with a twinkle in his eye. Wow, the Rebbe says, "This kid speaks truth. What a remarkable young man." And 40 or 50 years later, when he recounts this video on Jem, he says that was the turning point in his life. When he realized that there was someone who believed in him unconditionally, that he could be better, that he had beauty, that he had truth to him, that he had kindness to him, that he had potential to him. It turned him around and catapulted him to great heights to be able to reach who he was. That's the story of the Rebbe. The Rebbe takes the story of simple leprosy in this week's Torah portion and tells us a message in our lives. When you see another human being, remember, if all you see is negativity, if all you see is imperfections, something's wrong with you, there's a misdiagnosis. As we get ready to celebrate the Rebbe's 120th year, as we get ready to the holiday of Passover, when we become free people and a nation again, let us take a little bit of the Rebbe with us. Let us look at our fellow, if it's our spouse, if it's our worker, if it's our boss, if it's our children, if it's our cousins, if it's whoever it may be, and let us try to find the positive. And let us try not only not to see imperfections, but even the imperfections that we do see, let us look at them as opportunities for growth, for us to become closer. God bless you. Have a great beginning of the week, and may we always see the good, as the Rebbe so eloquently taught us. Have a great day.